Tonight, we're traveling back over 3,000 years to ancient Egypt, a land of mighty pharaohs, towering temples, endless deserts, and the life-giving Nile. Sounds peaceful. Sounds beautiful. Sounds like somewhere you'd love to visit. Until you remember one small detail. You actually have to live there. For the next 7 days, you'll face blistering heat, dangerous wildlife, exhausting work, strange food, powerful gods, and a society where almost every part of your life is controlled by tradition. So before you settle onto your read mat, don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying these bedtime history journeys. Subscribe for more relaxing adventures through the ancient world. And now, let's begin your very uncomfortable first week in ancient Egypt. Day 1, welcome to the Nile and its many problems. Take a slow breath and imagine this. You wake up before sunrise, not because your alarm went off, but because the world around you is already coming alive. The air is warm even this early. Somewhere nearby, birds call across the water. Frogs croak in the reeds. A donkey complains loudly about something only donkeys understand. The smell of damp mud mixes with smoke from cooking fires. Welcome to ancient Egypt. At first, it feels almost magical. The sky slowly turns orange as the sun climbs above the horizon. Palm trees sway gently. The mighty Nile River stretches farther than you can see. Everything looks peaceful, almost like a painting. Then you remember one tiny detail. You have to survive here for a whole week. And suddenly, the view doesn't seem quite so relaxing. Ancient Egypt was one of the greatest civilizations in history. It built massive temples, created beautiful art, and raised pyramids that still leave people speechless today. But the average person living here wasn't spending their mornings admiring monuments. They were busy trying to stay alive. Your first challenge starts with the Nile itself. Without this river, Egypt wouldn't exist. Almost the entire country is surrounded by harsh desert. Rain hardly falls. Outside the narrow green strip beside the Nile, there is mostly dry land, rocks and endless sand. The Nile is everything. It gives water for drinking, water for farming, water for animals, water for travel. Even the calendar of ancient Egypt follows the river's yearly flooding. Every summer, the Nile rises and spreads across the land. When the water finally goes back down, it leaves behind rich black mud. That mud is perfect for growing wheat, barley, vegetables, and fruit. To the people of ancient Egypt, this yearly flood feels almost like a gift from the gods. To you, it also feels like a giant, muddy inconvenience. Imagine trying to walk anywhere after weeks of flooding. Your feet sink into wet soil. Insects seem to appear from nowhere. The air becomes heavy and sticky. Every path turns into slippery ground. You haven't even reached breakfast yet. Speaking of breakfast, getting clean water isn't as easy as turning on a kitchen tap. The Nile is your main water source. It's also where people wash clothes, wash themselves, clean animals, move boats, and sometimes throw things they don't need anymore. Not exactly the sparkling mountain spring you may have imagined. People often let dirt settle before drinking the water or mixed it into beer, which was actually one of the safest everyday drinks because the brewing process reduced some harmful germs. Even so, stomach problems were never far away. Your modern immune system is probably already writing its resignation letter. Now let's talk about the weather. You may think you know what hot feels like. Ancient Egypt politely disagrees. As the morning goes on, the temperature keeps rising. Shade becomes your best friend, but there isn't much of it. The sun beats down on your head with impressive confidence. There is no air conditioner, no electric fan, no cold bottle of water waiting in the fridge. Just sunshine, lots and lots of sunshine. People wear light linen clothing because wool would feel like wearing a blanket inside an oven. White linen reflects some of the heat, but even that can only help so much. And don't forget your feet. Many people walk barefoot or wear simple sandals. The ground can become painfully hot by midday. Sharp rocks, broken pottery, and rough paths are waiting to remind you that shoes with soft rubber soles are a very modern luxury. As if the heat wasn't enough, sometimes the wind decides to join the fun. A sandstorm can arrive with little warning. At first, it looks like a strange cloud in the distance. Then the sky turns dusty. The wind becomes stronger. Tiny grains of sand hit your skin, your face, your eyes, and somehow even places that seem impossible. You quickly discover that breathing sand is not on your list of favorite hobbies. Even after the storm passes, dust seems to stay everywhere. Your clothes feel dusty. Your hair feels dusty. Your lunch probably feels dusty too. Now, you notice something moving in the water. Please don't jump in. The Nile is home to one of Africa's most famous hunters, the crocodile. These giant reptiles are fast, patient, and very good at pretending they are just floating logs. Until they aren't. Ancient Egyptians respected crocodiles so much that they even worshipped a crocodile god, named Sobek. Respect was probably the safest option. But crocodiles are not the only problem. Hippos also live here. Today they may look funny in cartoons, but real hippos are among the most dangerous large animals in Africa. They are massive, surprisingly fast, and very protective of their territory. If a hippo decides you are bothering it, congratulations. You have accidentally become part of today's entertainment. So maybe staying on land sounds safer. Not quite. Mosquitoes buzz around the wetlands. Flies gather wherever animals and people live together. Other biting insects make themselves comfortable on your skin without asking permission. No bug spray. No citronella candles. Just endless buzzing in your ears while you try to sleep. And sleeping is another adventure. Forget your soft mattress. Forget memory foam. Forget fluffy pillows. Tonight you sleep on a woven reed mat inside a simple mud brick house. The walls help keep the inside cooler than the blazing outdoors, which is actually quite clever. Mud brick is one of the best building materials for hot climates. But the house is small often, crowded and shared with family members, animals nearby, and every sound the neighborhood can produce. Someone's baby is crying. A goat has strong opinions. Dogs bark in the distance. Roosters seem convinced that everyone enjoys waking up before sunrise. Sleep well. Then there are the smells. Ancient towns do not have modern sewage systems. Waste is removed by people or animals, and not always quickly. Cooking fires fill the air with smoke. Livestock live close to homes. Fish dry in the sun. Markets overflow with people, baskets, mud, and noise. It's a busy place, a living place, but definitely not a place that smells like lavender candles. By the time your first day finally ends, you've walked through mud, survived blazing heat, avoided crocodiles, ignored mosquitoes, breathed enough dust to build your own tiny pyramid, and discovered that simple things like drinking water or getting a good night's sleep are daily challenges. And this is only day one. You haven't started hard labor. You haven't paid taxes. You haven't visited a temple. You haven't faced disease, dangerous work, or the strict rules of Egyptian society. Right now, you're simply lying on your reed mat, looking up at a sky filled with stars that seem brighter than any you've ever seen. The Nile quietly flows beside you, just as it has for thousands of years. Tomorrow, your body will discover that ancient Egypt is not only beautiful, it's exhausting, and your week has only just begun. Day 2, your body starts losing the battle. You somehow made it through your first night. Not comfortably, of course. The reed mat was harder than expected. Mosquitoes spent the evening treating you like an all-you-can-eat buffet. A rooster proudly announced the sunrise at what felt like 3 in the morning. And just when you finally drifted off, someone's donkey decided the entire village needed to hear its latest song. Welcome to day 2. You stretch your back, stand up, and immediately notice something. Your body already hurts. Yesterday wasn't even a full day of hard work. You mostly walked around, tried not to become crocodile food, and admired the Nile from a safe distance. Yet your legs feel sore, your shoulders ache, and your skin already feels warmer than it should. Ancient Egypt wastes no time reminding newcomers who's in charge. The first enemy is the heat. As the sun climbs higher, the temperature rises fast. There is very little escape. Trees provide only small patches of shade, and many jobs happen out in the open. Farmers, builders, fishermen, and laborers all continue working because stopping simply isn't an option. The harvest won't wait. Neither will the pharaoh's taxes. You quickly begin sweating. A lot. Without enough water, your body starts losing more than just sweat. You lose salt, energy, and the ability to think clearly. Your head begins to pound. Your mouth feels dry. Even walking becomes harder. Today, grabbing an ice-cold drink is easy. In ancient Egypt, your choices are much more limited. Water is available, but as we mentioned before, it isn't always perfectly clean. Beer is often safer, because the brewing process helps reduce harmful germs. Before you get too excited, this isn't the strong beer you might find today. Egyptian beer is usually thick, cloudy, and much weaker in alcohol. Think of it as something between a drink and a meal. It won't win any international brewing awards, but it keeps many people going. Now look down at your clothes. You're wearing linen made from flax plants. It's light, breathable, and perfect for hot weather. Rich people wear soft, finely woven linen. Yours is, let's say, a little less luxurious. It's rough, scratchy, and after sweating all day, it sticks to your skin in ways you'd rather not think about. Fashion was clearly not the biggest concern. Your feet aren't having a great time either. If you're wearing sandals, they're little more than flat soles tied together with leather straps. If you're barefoot, every sharp stone reminds you that modern sneakers deserve more appreciation than they usually get. Blisters begin forming. Small cuts appear. Dust works its way into every crack in your skin. And dust is everywhere. It settles on your face, your hair, your clothes, your food. Even after washing, you somehow still feel dusty. You start wondering if dust is now simply part of your personality. But the biggest problems are the ones you can't see. The Nile gives life, but it also carries tiny parasites and bacteria. Modern scientists know that. Many ancient people suffered from illnesses spread through contaminated water. Some parasites entered the body through drinking, while others could even enter through the skin. After standing in infected water. That sounds unfair, because it absolutely is. Soon your stomach starts protesting. Maybe it's cramps. Maybe it's diarrhea. Maybe it's both. Neither is ideal when toilets haven't been invented yet. One of the most common health problems was intestinal disease. Food wasn't always stored safely, clean water wasn't guaranteed, and flies happily visited both garbage and dinner without seeing any problem with that arrangement. Meanwhile, your eyes begin to sting. Bright sunlight reflects off the pale desert sand all day long. Dust constantly blows through the air. Eye infections become common, and many Egyptians spend their lives dealing with irritated or damaged eyesight. Ancient doctors even developed eye ointments using natural ingredients like honey and minerals. Surprisingly, some of these treatments may actually have helped because honey has natural antibacterial properties. Not every ancient remedy was just wishful thinking. Still, you'd probably rather visit a modern pharmacy. Now it's lunchtime. Fresh bread sounds wonderful. Until you take a bite. Crunch. Wait, bread isn't supposed to crunch like that. The grain used for bread is ground with large stone mills. Tiny pieces of stone slowly mix into the flour. Every loaf contains little grains of grit. One sandwich won't hurt much, but imagine eating gritty bread every day for 30 or 40 years. Your teeth slowly wear down like sandpaper rubbing against wood. Archaeologists have found many Egyptian skeletons with severely worn teeth. Some people had teeth ground almost flat before reaching old age. Suddenly, your dentist doesn't seem quite so expensive anymore. And speaking of teeth, there are no toothbrushes filled with mint toothpaste. People clean their teeth using chewing sticks, powders, or simple cloths. Some methods work reasonably well, but they cannot completely stop decay or wear. A toothache in ancient Egypt could become a lifelong companion. Medical care itself is fascinating. The Egyptians were among the best doctors of the ancient world. They understood broken bones, stitched wounds, and recognized many illnesses. Medical texts describe hundreds of treatments using herbs, oils, bandages, and natural ingredients. Doctors even specialized in different parts of the body. Some focused only on eyes. Others treated stomach problems or injuries. For over 3,000 years ago, that's pretty impressive. But medicine also mixed science with magic. If someone became seriously ill, they might receive herbal medicine, along with a magical spell. A priest might pray to a god while a doctor applied honey to a wound. To an Egyptian, these two ideas didn't conflict. Both were simply part of healing. If one failed, perhaps the other would work. And honestly, when antibiotics don't exist, you're willing to try almost anything. Even small injuries become dangerous. That tiny cut on your foot, without proper cleaning, it could become infected. That scrape from carrying heavy baskets, same problem. Today, we barely notice little cuts. Back then, they could become serious if infection spread. As the afternoon drags on, exhaustion begins to settle in. Not the kind of tiredness you feel after a long day at the office. This is a full-body exhaustion. The sun drains your energy. The heat slows your thoughts. Your muscles ache from constant movement. Even breathing feels harder in the hot, dusty air. You finally understand why many Egyptians rested during the hottest part of the afternoon, whenever possible before returning to work later. It's less about comfort. It's about survival. As evening finally arrives, the temperature becomes kinder. A cool breeze drifts across the Nile. Families gather outside their homes. Children laugh and play. Someone nearby starts baking. Fresh bread for tomorrow. For a brief moment, life feels peaceful again. It's easy to understand why generations stayed here despite the hardships. The Nile gives them everything they need if they're willing to endure everything it demands in return. You lie back on your reed mat once more. Your skin is sunburned. Your stomach feels uncertain. Your feet are sore. Your clothes are still dusty. And tomorrow you'll discover that surviving ancient Egypt isn't only about staying healthy. It's also about working harder than you've probably ever worked in your life. Day 3, work hard, harder, even harder. The sun hasn't even appeared yet. You open your eyes, hoping for just 5 more minutes of sleep. Ancient Egypt has some bad news. There is no snooze button. Around you, the village is already awake. Fires are being lit for breakfast. Donkeys are loaded with baskets. Farmers are gathering their tools. The air is cool for now, but everyone knows it won't stay that way for long. If you're going to get any work done, you need to start before the sun turns the entire countryside into an oven. Welcome to day 3. Until now, you've mostly been trying to survive the climate. Today, you'll discover something even more exhausting. Work. Lots of it. When most people picture ancient Egypt, they imagine powerful pharaohs, glittering treasures, and giant pyramids stretching toward the sky. But here's the thing. Almost nobody lived like that. The vast majority of Egyptians were farmers. Their lives didn't revolve around gold or grand palaces. They revolved around dirt. Good, rich, black dirt left behind by the Nile. Every year, after the river flooded and the water slowly pulled back, the fields became ready for planting. This rich soil made Egypt one of the most successful farming civilizations in history. But fertile land doesn't grow food by itself. Someone has to plant the seeds. Someone has to water the crops. Someone has to pull weeds under the blazing sun. And today, that someone is you. You pick up a simple wooden hoe. It isn't shiny. It isn't comfortable. And after about 20 minutes, your hands are already begging for modern gardening gloves. The fields stretch as far as you can see. Workers move slowly through rows of wheat and barley. Others care for onions, beans, lettuce, flax, and vegetables. Everyone has something to do. Nobody stands around. Because if the crops fail, everyone suffers. The Nile gives Egypt life, but people still have to help the water reach the fields. That means digging canals, cleaning irrigation ditches, building small earth walls, carrying water where it needs to go. Imagine hauling heavy buckets again and again in temperatures that keep climbing every hour. By lunchtime, your shoulders feel like they're made of stone. And remember, this isn't a special workout. This is Tuesday, or whatever ancient Egyptians called Tuesday. Now let's talk about taxes. You don't pay them with a credit card. You don't transfer money through an app. You pay with grain. Government officials carefully measure your harvest. A portion belongs to the pharaoh. If your crops are poor because the flood wasn't good, the taxes don't magically disappear. Officials still expect payment. This creates enormous pressure on farming families. Every harvest matters. Every basket counts. Every grain of wheat can make the difference between comfort and hardship. Fortunately for the tax collectors, unfortunately for you, if farming isn't keeping you busy enough, there's something called corvée labor. Sounds fancy. It isn't. Corvée labor means the government can require ordinary people to work on public projects for part of the year instead of paying certain taxes. Think of it as mandatory community service. Except the community project might be moving giant blocks of stone. Many people imagine slaves building the pyramids. The truth is more complicated. Much of Egypt's massive construction projects relied on skilled workers, craftsmen, and seasonal laborers who were organized into teams and supplied by the state. They worked incredibly hard, but they weren't simply random people being whipped every minute like old movies often show. That doesn't mean the work was easy. Far from it. Picture yourself standing inside a limestone quarry. The sun reflects off bright white rock. Dust fills the air every time a worker strikes the stone. Copper chisels chip away at enormous blocks. Wooden sleds wait nearby. Now comes the fun part, moving them. Thousands of kilograms of stone don't move because you ask politely. Food keeps families alive. No pressure. Of course, there is one career everyone secretly envies. The scribe. If you could choose any job in ancient Egypt, this might be it. Scribes don't spend their days digging canals. They don't carry giant stones. They don't chase runaway goats through muddy fields. Instead, they learn to read and write. That sounds ordinary today. Back then, it was extraordinary. Very few people could read the complex system of hieroglyphs and other Egyptian scripts. Becoming a scribe meant years of education, but it also opened doors to government jobs, temple work, and administration. You get shade. You get respect. You get fewer blisters. Honestly, it's a pretty good deal. Ancient Egyptian schools were strict, though. Students copied texts over and over again. Teachers expected perfection. Some old writings even mention students being punished for laziness. Apparently, homework has been ruining childhood for thousands of years. Speaking of childhood, children don't spend their afternoons playing video games. From an early age, they help their families. Girls often learn cooking, weaving, and household work. Boys help in the fields, tend animals, or begin learning a trade. If your father is a potter, there's a good chance you'll become one too. If he's a farmer, well, welcome to the wheat fields. There isn't much room for changing careers. As the afternoon heat reaches its peak, everyone slows down slightly. Not because they're lazy, because moving too fast could leave you exhausted or dangerously overheated. Even then, the work continues. Animals need feeding. Tools need repairing. Boats need unloading. Canals need cleaning. There is always another task waiting. One thing quickly becomes clear. Ancient Egypt is built on teamwork. No single farmer feeds the kingdom. No single builder raises a temple. No single worker creates a pyramid. Thousands of ordinary people doing ordinary jobs every single day. That's what keeps this civilization alive. History often remembers kings, but civilizations survive because of workers. As the sun finally begins to sink, you make the slow walk back to your village. Your shoulders ache. Your hands are covered with fresh blisters. Your legs feel heavier than the stones you watched people move all day. Dinner has never sounded so exciting. You sit outside your mud brick home, watching the golden light reflect across the Nile. It's beautiful, peaceful even. For a few moments, it's easy to forget how hard the day has been. Then you remember something. Tomorrow you'll have to do it all again. And that's only if you're lucky, because tomorrow you'll discover that working hard isn't the only challenge in ancient Egypt. You also have to know exactly where you belong. And in a kingdom ruled by a living God, knowing your place could mean the difference between a comfortable life and a very dangerous one. Congratulations! You've survived 3 whole days in ancient Egypt. Honestly, that's already better than your modern body probably expected. Your feet are covered in blisters, your shoulders still hurt from yesterday's work, and you've developed a new appreciation for chairs, clean drinking water, and weekends. But today you'll learn something surprising. The biggest challenge in ancient Egypt isn't always the heat, or the crocodiles, or even the endless work. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is forgetting your place, because ancient Egypt runs on rules. Lots of them. As the sun rises, you notice something interesting. Every person you pass seems to know exactly where they belong. The farmer works in the fields. The fisherman heads toward the Nile. The potter opens his workshop. Temple priests prepare for morning rituals. Everything has its place. Everyone has a role. To modern eyes, it might seem strict. To an Egyptian, it's simply how the universe is supposed to work. At the very top of this giant social ladder is one person, the pharaoh. Now, if you're imagining a king wearing a shiny golden crown while relaxing on a comfortable throne all day, you're only seeing part of the picture. To the people of ancient Egypt, the pharaoh isn't just a ruler. He's believed to be chosen by the gods and responsible for keeping the world in balance. His job is to protect Egypt, maintain justice, build temples, and make sure the gods remain pleased. That's a pretty stressful job description. Imagine updating your resume with responsible for the entire universe staying in order. No pressure at all, because the pharaoh is seen as the link between humans and the gods. Questioning him isn't just seen as political. It can also be viewed as disrespecting the divine order itself. So if someone asks what you think about the pharaoh, this is probably not the best time to become a professional critic. Just below the pharaoh are some of the most powerful people in the kingdom, the nobles and high officials. These men and women oversee different parts of the government. They collect taxes, organize workers, supervise building projects, settle disputes, and report directly to the royal court. One of the most important officials is the vizier. Think of the vizier as the pharaoh's chief manager. If ancient Egypt were a giant company, the pharaoh would be the owner, and the vizier would somehow be in charge of almost everything else. Not exactly a relaxing office job. Then come the priests. Temples in ancient Egypt are much more than places of worship. They own land. They employ workers. They store food. They manage wealth. Some temples become incredibly rich and powerful. Every morning, priests perform rituals for the gods. They wash sacred statues, offer food, burn incense, and recite prayers. Interestingly, Ordinary people usually don't enter the most sacred parts of the temple. Those inner rooms are reserved for priests. You may stand outside during festivals, but the daily rituals happen behind massive stone walls. Religion isn't something people do once a week. It shapes almost every part of daily life. Below the priests are the scribes. Yes, the lucky people we talked about yesterday. They keep records, write letters, count grain, record taxes, and organize government business. Because they can read and write, they're highly respected. Meanwhile, you're still trying to remember where you left your sandals. Below them are skilled craftsmen, builders, artists, carpenters, metal workers, stone carvers, jewelry makers. Many of the beautiful statues and colorful tomb paintings we admire today exist because these talented workers spent years mastering their craft. Then come the farmers, the largest group in Egypt. Without them, nobody eats. No harvest means no bread. No bread means no kingdom. The simple. At the bottom are laborers, servants, and people with very few possessions. Ancient Egypt also had enslaved people, especially during certain periods and after wars. However, slavery in Egypt was not always identical to later systems seen elsewhere in history. Many workers on state projects were not enslaved people but paid or obligated laborers serving through taxes or seasonal work. History is often more complicated than the movies make it seem. Now let's talk about taxes again, because somehow they're even less fun today. Government officials travel from village to village measuring harvests. Scribes carefully record everything. How much grain did you produce? How many animals do you own? How much belongs to the state? There isn't much room for arguing. And trying to hide part of your harvest? That's a risky game. Ancient records mention punishments for tax evasion, including fines and beatings in some cases. Apparently, tax season has always been stressful. But paying taxes isn't your only duty. You also have religious responsibilities. Festivals honoring different gods fill the calendar throughout the year. Some are joyful celebrations with music, dancing, and large public gatherings. Others are quiet ceremonies asking the gods for protection, good harvests, or successful floods. Imagine living in a world where every good harvest, healthy child, or safe journey is believed to depend partly on keeping the gods happy. You probably wouldn't skip the festival. One idea guides almost everything in Egyptian society. It's called Ma'at. Ma'at represents truth, justice, balance, and harmony. To Egyptians, the universe works properly only when Ma'at is maintained. The pharaoh protects it. Judges enforce it. Ordinary people are expected to live by it. Lying, cheating, stealing, breaking promises. These aren't just bad habits. They're actions that disturb the balance of the world. It's a big responsibility. Now suppose someone steals your tools. What happens? You don't call the police. Instead, local officials or judges hear the case. Witnesses speak. Evidence is considered. Punishments vary depending on the crime. Some offenses result in fines. Others involve physical punishment. Serious crimes can lead to much harsher penalties. Ancient Egyptian law may not look like modern legal systems, but it still aims to maintain order. Of course, people are still people. Not every official is perfectly honest. Corruption exists. Some powerful individuals abuse their position. Bribes happen. Favoritism happens. History has never been completely free from human nature. As afternoon arrives, you begin to understand something important. Life here isn't just about surviving physically. It's about surviving socially. Say the wrong thing to the wrong person. Ignore a religious custom. Refuse your duties. Challenge authority. Suddenly, life becomes much more difficult. At the same time, there is comfort in knowing exactly what society expects from you. Everyone understands their responsibilities. Children learn them from a young age. Parents pass them on. Neighbors help one another during harvests. Communities celebrate together during festivals. There is a strong sense of belonging, even if it comes with many rules. As evening falls, musicians play simple melodies on harps and flutes somewhere in the village. Families gather outside their homes to eat bread, onions, fish, and fresh dates while the worst of the day's heat slowly fades away. For a little while, life feels calm. The stars begin appearing one by one above the Nile. You look toward the distant temple, where priests continue their evening rituals. Somewhere far away, the pharaoh is likely surrounded by officials discussing taxes, building, projects, and matters of state. Meanwhile, you're simply grateful that no crocodile has eaten you yet. It's funny how quickly your standards have changed. You lie down once again on your reed mat. Tomorrow brings a different challenge. You've worked hard. You've followed the rules. Now it's time to eat. Or at least, you'll eat what ancient Egyptians call dinner. Let's just say that if you're hoping for pizza, coffee, chocolate cake, or a late-night burger, you're about 3,000. Morning arrives once again. At this point, your body has stopped asking why it's awake before sunrise. It has simply accepted its fate. Your muscles still ache from yesterday's work, but something else is demanding your attention. Now, your stomach. After 4 days of hard labor, endless walking, and sweating under the Egyptian sun, you're absolutely starving. Finally, proper meal. You sit down, excited to discover what one of history's greatest civilizations has prepared for. Breakfast. Then someone hands you bread and beer. Again, welcome to the Egyptian menu. Now, don't misunderstand. Bread wasn't just food in ancient Egypt. It was life. Almost every meal included bread in some form. Rich families enjoyed soft, finely baked loaves, in different shapes and flavors. Poor families usually ate simpler, coarser bread made from barley or emmer wheat. Some loaves were round, some were flat, some were baked in clay ovens. Others were cooked over open fires. There were even sweetbreads flavored with dates or honey for special occasions. Still, after eating bread every single day, you might begin dreaming about a cheeseburger. The beer probably surprises you even more. Today, many people think of beer as something you drink while watching sports. Ancient Egyptians had a different idea. Beer was an everyday food. Children drank it. Adults drank it. Workers received it as part of their wages. Builders working on royal projects were often given bread and beer every day. Don't picture a modern ice-cold lager. Egyptian beer was thicker, cloudier, and much lower in alcohol. It contained bits of grain and provided calories that helped people get through long working days. In many ways, it was almost like drinking liquid bread. Not exactly refreshing, but definitely filling. Next come the vegetables. Luckily, ancient Egyptians actually ate quite a healthy variety. Onions were one of the most common foods. Garlic was another favorite. Leeks, lettuce, cucumbers, beans, lentils, chickpeas. These simple foods appeared on tables across Egypt. Onions, in particular, were incredibly popular. Workers often carried them into the fields because they stored well and added flavor to otherwise simple meals. If everyone around you smells a little like onions, now you know why. Fruit is one of the brighter parts of the menu. Fresh dates are sweet and full of energy. Figs are soft and delicious. Grapes grow in many areas and some are turned into wine. Pomegranates, when available, are considered a real treat. Palm trees provide both shade and food. After days of dusty bread, biting into a sweet date feels almost magical. You silently thank whoever first planted a date palm. Of course, no civilization can live on bread and fruit alone. The Nile provides fish in incredible numbers. Tilapia, catfish, and perch are common catches. Fishing boats head out early every morning, returning with baskets full of fresh food. Fish can be grilled, roasted, dried, or salted to preserve them for later. The smell around fishing villages, well, let's just say it's unforgettable. If you're lucky enough to visit during a festival or special celebration, you might be offered duck or goose. Ancient Egyptians kept many birds, and roasted duck was considered a delicious meal. Now we're talking, but don't expect beef every weekend. Cattle were valuable, very valuable. They helped plow fields, produced milk, and represented wealth. Because of this, beef was usually reserved for wealthy families, temples, or important celebrations. Ordinary farmers didn't enjoy steak very often. In fact, if someone invited you over for beef, you were probably attending a very special occasion. Speaking of special occasions, let's talk about dessert. Honey was the main sweetener in ancient Egypt. There was no white sugar, no chocolate syrup, no candy bars hidden in your pocket. Instead, honey-flavored cakes, bread, and pastries. Beekeeping was already well developed, and honey was considered precious. Take one bite of a honey cake after weeks of simple meals, and you'd probably feel like you've won the ancient lottery. Now imagine explaining chocolate to an Egyptian baker. So it's made from beans that grow across the ocean. What ocean? Never mind. Actually, many foods you eat today simply don't exist here. No potatoes, no tomatoes, no corn, no chili peppers, no coffee, no tea, no bananas, no oranges, no pizza, no hamburgers, and definitely no midnight delivery app bringing snacks to your mudbrick house. The ancient menu suddenly feels much smaller. Cooking itself is surprisingly simple. Most families prepare meals over open fires. Clay ovens bake bread. Large pottery jars store grain, oil, and water. Meals are often cooked in clay pots placed directly over hot coals. There are no refrigerators, so food has to be eaten fairly quickly or preserved by drying, salting, or smoking. This means freshness matters. It also means leftovers don't last very long. Food storage is one of the biggest challenges. Grain is kept inside large storage bins, carefully protected from moisture and pests. Unfortunately, rats also enjoy free food. Insects agree. Keeping supplies safe requires constant attention. A poor storage season can mean disaster later in the year. And that brings us to one of the greatest fears in ancient Egypt. A bad Nile flood. Remember how the yearly flood normally brings rich soil. Sometimes it doesn't. If the river rises too little, crops struggle to grow. If it rises too much, villages and fields can be damaged. Either way, harvests suffer. When harvests fail, food becomes scarce. Prices rise. Families eat less. Hunger spreads. Several years of poor flooding can lead to famine across large parts of Egypt. Suddenly, that simple loaf of bread becomes more valuable than gold. It's easy to admire the temples and pyramids. It's much harder to imagine the worry of wondering whether this year's harvest will feed your children. As dinner approaches, you notice something else. Meals are social. Families gather together. Neighbors visit. Stories are shared after long days of work. Children laugh while helping prepare food. Someone begins playing a small harp nearby. The setting sun turns the Nile golden, and for a little while, the hardships of the day seem to disappear. There is a quiet beauty in these ordinary evenings. Simple food, simple homes, simple conversations. No television, no smartphones, no endless notifications buzzing every few minutes. Just people enjoying the company of those around them. Maybe that's one part of ancient Egypt we wouldn't mind borrowing. As darkness settles across the village, your stomach is finally full. Not stuffed, just satisfied enough to face another day. You've learned that Egyptian food isn't fancy for most people. It's practical, keeps workers alive. It fuels farmers through long days under the blazing sun. And every loaf of bread reminds you that life here depends entirely on the Nile. Tomorrow, you'll discover something even more important than food. Because in ancient Egypt, every sunrise, every harvest, every healthy child, and every safe journey is believed to depend on forces far greater than kings or rivers. Tomorrow, you'll step into a world where gods are everywhere, magic feels completely real, and preparing. For death is simply another part of everyday life. You've almost made it. 6 days in ancient Egypt. At this point, you've survived the blazing sun, muddy fields, endless work, questionable drinking, water, and a menu that has convinced you bread can, in fact, become boring. You're starting to understand how this civilization works, or at least you think you are. Then day 6 arrives, and you realize you've been missing the biggest part of ancient Egyptian life all along. Religion, not just during holidays, not just inside temples. Every single day, everywhere you look. Before breakfast, your neighbors quietly whisper a prayer. A farmer asks the gods for a good harvest. A fisherman hopes for a safe trip on the Nile. A mother places a small offering beside a household shrine. A traveler touches an amulet hanging around their neck before setting off. No one finds this unusual. To an Egyptian, the gods are as real as the river flowing beside the village. You might believe the Nile floods because of nature. They believe the gods are helping the Nile do its job. Ancient Egypt doesn't have just one god, or even 10. There are hundreds. Some protect homes. You've almost made it. 6 days in ancient Egypt. At this point, you've survived the blazing sun, muddy fields, endless work, questionable drinking, water, and a menu that has convinced you bread can, in fact, become boring. You're starting to understand how this civilization works. Or at least you think you are. Then day 6 arrives, and you realize you've been missing the biggest part of ancient Egyptian life all along. Religion, not just during holidays, not just inside temples. Every single day, everywhere you look. Before breakfast, your neighbors quietly whisper a prayer. A farmer asks the gods for a good harvest. A fisherman hopes for a safe trip on the Nile. A mother places a small offering beside a household shrine. A traveler touches an amulet hanging around their neck before setting off. No one finds this unusual. To an Egyptian, the gods are as real as the river flowing beside the village. You might believe the Nile floods because of nature. They believe the gods are helping the Nile do its job. Ancient Egypt doesn't have just one god, or even 10. There are hundreds. Some protect homes. Some guard the dead. Some watch over children. Some control the sky. Others rule the sun, the river, or the afterlife. Life feels like one giant neighborhood, and every part of that neighborhood has its own divine manager. One of the most important gods is Ra, the sun god. Every morning, when the sun rises over the eastern horizon, Egyptians believe Ra is sailing across the sky in his great solar boat. Every evening, as the sun disappears, they believe he travels through the dangerous underworld, before rising again the next morning. To you, it's sunrise. To them, it's another victory over darkness. Then there's Osiris, the ruler of the afterlife, the god of rebirth. He represents hope that death isn't the end. His story is one of the most famous in Egyptian mythology. He is killed by his jealous brother, Set, but through the love of his wife Isis and the help of powerful magic, he lives again. For Egyptians, this isn't just a story. It's proof that life can continue after death. Speaking of Isis, she is one of the most beloved goddesses in Egypt. She represents motherhood, healing, protection, and magic. People pray to her for safety, good health, and help during difficult times. Then there's Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship. Anubis, the jackal-headed protector of the dead. Thoth, the wise god of writing and knowledge. Hathor, the goddess of music, joy, love, and celebration. And yes, the crocodile god Sobek is still out there, reminding you to stay out of the river. With so many gods, remembering everyone's job might be harder than remembering your online passwords. Fortunately, the Egyptians grow up with these stories from childhood. For them, it's simply everyday life. Now you finally get to visit one of Egypt's magnificent temples. From the outside, it's breathtaking. Massive stone walls rise high above your head. Towering columns are carved with colorful scenes. Statues of gods and pharaohs stand silently at the entrance. The building feels powerful, almost alive. But here's something surprising. Most ordinary people never enter the temple's holiest rooms. Only priests are allowed inside the sacred areas where the statue of the god is kept. Each morning, priests perform special rituals. They wash the statue, dress it in clean linen, offer bread, fruit, flowers, incense, and beer. Then they pray before closing the sanctuary again. The gods don't literally eat the food. Instead, Egyptians believe the god receives its spiritual essence. Later, the food is shared among the temple staff. Not a bad lunch plan. Temples aren't only religious centers. They're also enormous businesses. They own farmland, employ workers, raise animals, store grain, produce goods. Some temples become among the richest institutions in all of Egypt. Religion and daily life are impossible to separate. Back at home, you notice a tiny shrine inside your house. Simple, a small statue, a few flowers, maybe a bowl containing food as an offering. Families pray here every day, asking for protection, health, and good fortune. Even ordinary homes have space for the divine. But nothing fascinates you more than how Egyptians think about death. To many modern people, death is something to avoid discussing. In ancient Egypt, it's something you prepare for your entire life. Imagine spending decades building your future home, except that future home is your tomb. The Egyptians believe that after death, the soul continues its journey, but only if the body is properly preserved. That's why mummification becomes so important. The process is careful and surprisingly advanced. Special embalmers gently remove organs that would decay quickly. The brain is removed through the nose using specialized tools. The body is dried with a natural salt called natron for many weeks. Then it is wrapped in hundreds of meters of linen bandages. Protective amulets are placed between the layers. Finally, the mummy is placed inside beautifully decorated coffins. It sounds strange today. To an Egyptian, it's an act of love and respect. Without preservation, the journey into the next world becomes much more difficult. And then comes the most famous moment of all, the judgment of the heart. According to Egyptian belief, after death, your heart is placed on one side of a great scale. On the other side rests the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth and justice. If your heart is light, honest, and free of wrongdoing, you may enter the peaceful afterlife. If it is heavy with lies, cruelty, or selfishness, things don't go so well. A terrifying creature called Amit waits nearby, part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. Apparently, someone decided the three scariest animals should become roommates. If your heart fails the test, Amit devours it. No peaceful afterlife, no second chance. Needless to say, you really hope you've been kind to your neighbors. Magic also plays an important role. People wear protective amulets shaped like scarabs, eyes, or sacred symbols. They believe these objects bring luck and protection. Dreams can carry messages. Certain words have power. Spells are written on papyrus or carved into tomb walls. To modern eyes, it might seem unusual. To Egyptians, magic is simply another part of how the universe works. As evening falls, a festival begins in the nearby town. Music fills the streets. Harps, flutes, drums. Families gather to celebrate one of the many religious holidays throughout the year. For a little while, work stops. People laugh, dance, share food. Children run through the streets carrying flowers. Religion isn't only about fear. It's also about joy, community, hope. As darkness settles over the Nile, temple torches flicker in the distance. Priests continue their quiet prayers while the stars slowly appear overhead. You lie back on your familiar reed mat. Your week is nearly over. You've begun to understand why the Egyptians built such incredible temples, carved giant statues, and filled tombs with beautiful paintings. They weren't just building for today. They were building for eternity. Tomorrow is your final day. And just when you think you've learned every danger ancient Egypt has to offer, you'll discover the ones nobody warned you about. The dangers that could end your week long before you ever reach the afterlife. Congratulations. Against all odds, you've reached your 7th day in ancient Egypt. That is genuinely impressive. 7 days ago, you arrived thinking your biggest concern would be avoiding a mummy's curse, or getting lost inside a pyramid. Instead, you've discovered that the real dangers are much less dramatic and much more real, because ancient Egypt is beautiful. It's also incredibly dangerous, not because of monsters, because life itself is fragile. As the first light of morning spreads across the Nile, you notice something different today. The village is quieter than usual. A family nearby is gathering outside their home. Their voices are soft. No music. No laughter. Someone has died. Death is a familiar visitor in ancient Egypt. Much more familiar than it is for most people today. One of the hardest parts of life here is childhood. Many children never reach adulthood. Modern medicine has made it easy to forget how dangerous childhood once was. A simple fever, an infected cut, a stomach illness. Today, these problems are often treatable. 3,000 years ago, they could become life-threatening. Parents love their children just as deeply as parents do today. But they also understand something heartbreaking. Not every child will grow up. Life expectancy in ancient Egypt was much lower than it is today, although if someone survived childhood and avoided serious illness or injury, they could still live into their 50s, 60s, or even longer. Getting old wasn't impossible. Getting there simply wasn't guaranteed. Childbirth is another enormous risk. For modern families, hospitals, trained doctors, and emergency care are often close by. Here, birth usually happens at home. Experienced women help. Midwives offer support. Prayers are spoken. Wooden boats travel up and down the Nile every day, carrying grain, stone, livestock, and passengers. Most journeys are safe. Not all. Strong currents, sudden storms, overloaded boats, or simple accidents can send people into the water. And we've already discussed who else enjoys spending time there. Let's just say swimming isn't always part of the rescue plan. Even on land, accidents happen. Builders fall from scaffolding. Heavy stones slip. Tools break. Farmers are kicked by cattle. Donkeys decide they've had enough of carrying loads. Apparently, stubbornness is one of history's oldest traditions. Fire is another constant threat. Most homes are built from mud brick, which doesn't burn easily. That's the good news. The bad news? Roofs often contain dried reeds and wooden beams. Cooking fires burn every day. One careless spark on a windy afternoon can spread surprisingly fast. Without fire engines or modern equipment, neighbors become the firefighters. Buckets, sand, teamwork, and a lot of hope. Then there are the years when nature simply refuses to cooperate. Everything in Egypt depends on the Nile. If the flood arrives too low, fields stay dry. If it arrives too high, homes and crops can be damaged. A single poor flood affects the harvest. Several poor floods can threaten an entire kingdom. Food becomes scarce. Prices rise. People worry. The same river that gives life can also decide how difficult that life becomes. And sometimes the danger doesn't come from nature at all. It comes from people. Although Egypt enjoyed long periods of stability, it also experienced wars, invasions, and struggles for power throughout its history. Foreign armies occasionally entered the land. Borders had to be defended. Young men could be called to serve as soldiers. Egyptian armies were well organized, using bows, spears, shields, axes, and, in later periods, horse-drawn chariots. If you happen to live during a time of conflict, Your peaceful farming life could change overnight. Even without war, life can feel mentally exhausting. Every day brings responsibilities. Feed the family, pay taxes, protect the harvest, respect the gods, avoid illness, hope the Nile floods properly, raise children, repair your home, repeat. There isn't much time for relaxing weekends. We're taking a vacation. The rhythm of life never really stops. And yet, something remarkable stands out. Despite all these hardships, people still laugh. Children still play games in the dusty streets. Neighbors still help one another harvest crops. Musicians still perform during festivals. Artists still paint colorful tombs filled with birds, flowers, and peaceful gardens. People still fall in love, still tell stories, still dream about tomorrow. History often focuses on kings and battles, but ordinary people continue living ordinary lives. That may be the most remarkable achievement of all. As the sun begins to set on your final evening, you walk toward the edge of the Nile one last time. The river glows gold beneath the fading light. Fishermen slowly pull in their nets. Birds circle overhead before settling into the reeds. The air is cooler now. For the first time all week, you stop rushing. You simply watch. You've learned that ancient Egypt isn't the perfect paradise shown in postcards or movies. It's a place filled with incredible beauty and constant challenges. Every sunrise brings hope. Every sunset means you've survived another day. And honestly, after everything you've experienced this week, that's something worth celebrating. Tonight, as you lie down beneath one of the clearest night skies you've ever seen, you realize something surprising. You came here expecting to admire pyramids. Instead, you've learned to admire the people who built the civilization around them. Tomorrow morning, your journey through ancient Egypt will finally come to an end. Before you return to the modern world, there's one final question left to answer. After everything you've seen, could you ever truly become an ancient Egyptian? Or would you spend the entire week dreaming about air conditioning, clean water, and a comfortable mattress? Well, you made it. Somehow, against the blazing sun, hungry crocodiles, clouds of mosquitoes, sore muscles, dusty roads, and more bread than any one person should reasonably eat, you've survived an entire week in ancient Egypt. That deserves a celebration, preferably with something other than another loaf of barley bread. As the first light of your final morning spreads across the Nile, the village slowly wakes around. You won last time. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Farmers gather their tools. Fishing boats drift quietly onto the river. Children chase each other between the mud brick houses while an old donkey loudly reminds everyone that he's still here. Some things never change. You take one last walk through the village. Only now do you notice how normal everything feels. The sounds, the smells, the rhythm of daily life. 7 days ago, this world seemed strange and unfamiliar. Now you understand it. Not perfectly, of course. No one could truly understand a civilization thousands of years old after only 1 week. But you've learned enough to see ancient Egypt differently. When most of us think about Egypt, we picture the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, golden masks, hidden tombs, treasure. Those things are certainly real, but they are only the smallest part of the story. The truth is, surviving ancient Egypt wasn't about being stronger. It was about being born into that world. People learned these skills from childhood. They understood the seasons. They knew the river. They recognized dangerous animals. They respected the gods. They accepted hardships that would shock most of us today because, to them, those hardships were simply normal life. That resilience is one of the greatest lessons ancient Egypt leaves behind. As the sun begins to set for the final time, golden light dances across the slow-moving Nile. Palm trees sway gently in the evening breeze. A fisherman rows quietly toward home. Temple columns glow orange beneath the fading sky. The desert, so harsh during the day, becomes calm and peaceful once more. The stars begin appearing overhead, exactly as they did for the first farmers who settled beside this river thousands of years ago. Exactly as they did for the builders of the pyramids. Exactly as they did for every child who ever looked up from a reed mat and wondered what tomorrow might bring. The Nile continues its endless journey north. Empires rise. Empires fall. Kings come and go. But the river keeps flowing. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of ancient Egypt. No civilization is remembered only because of its rulers. It is remembered because ordinary people woke up every morning, did difficult work, cared for one another, and built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes. So, as you settle comfortably back into your modern bed tonight with clean sheets, safe drinking water, and hopefully no crocodiles waiting outside your window, you might find yourself thinking about those ordinary Egyptians who made one of history's greatest civilizations possible. And if the gentle sound of the Nile has made your eyes just a little heavier, then perhaps it's time to let history drift quietly into your dreams. Good night.